I checked the instrument panel one more time as our lunar module approached the final stages of our journey. The moon appeared huge in our viewport, its cratered surface showing more details every minute. This was my third mission to the lunar station, and seeing the empty landscape again should have made me feel at ease. Instead, I felt a weird tension in my shoulders that I couldn't explain. Final approach sequence initiated, Samantha announced from the pilot's seat, her voice calm and professional. Her brown hair was pulled back in its usual neat ponytail, and her fingers moved with practiced precision across the controls. Bill nodded from the command console. Looking good. We're right on schedule for docking at Alpha in about 43 minutes. I ran through the pre-docking checklist, the routine so well known I could have done it in my sleep. 6 months at Moonbase Alpha conducting atmospheric research, then back home. Standard procedure, nothing we hadn't done before. The communication system crackled to life, interrupting my thoughts. Lunar Module 3, this is mission control. Priority transmission. Bill looked unhappy and reached for the comm switch. This is Commander Anderson. Go ahead, mission control. Divert to Moonbase Bravo immediately. Chemical leak detected at Alpha. Repeat. Divert to Moonbase Bravo. The three of us exchanged looks. I felt my stomach tighten. Mission control, please confirm diversion to Bravo, Bill responded, his voice steady despite the unexpected order. Confirmed, Commander. Alpha is currently unsafe. Proceed to Bravo for mission continuation. When the transmission ended, Samantha turned to face us. Bravo. That auxiliary base has been abandoned for years. At least 3 years, I added, pulling up the base schematics on my tablet. It was only meant to be temporary while they expanded Alpha. Bill's expression remained neutral, but I could see the concern in his eyes. We have our orders. Samantha, calculate new approach vectors for Bravo. Yes, sir, she replied, already adjusting our course. I pulled up what little information we had on the auxiliary base. Bravo was built to house 12 personnel maximum, basic research facilities, minimal life support redundancies. It wasn't designed for long-term occupation. We'll make it work, Bill said, his tone making it clear the discussion was over. How long until we reach the new landing site? Samantha checked her calculations. About 2 hours with the course adjustment. The rest of our approach was tense and quiet. We each focused on our tasks, but I caught both Bill and Samantha glancing at the communication system, perhaps hoping for a message telling us to return to the original plan. No such message came. 2 hours later, Samantha expertly guided our module down to the lunar surface, about 2 miles from Bravo's main entrance. The landing was smooth, but as the dust settled around us, I noticed something that made no sense. Bill, I said, pointing through the viewport. The base has lights on. Bill leaned forward, squinting at the distant structure. That's impossible. Power should have been shut down when the base was abandoned. But there was no denying what we were seeing. Lights were on in several of Bravo's windows, lighting up the moon's surface. Running diagnostics, I said, checking my instruments. Power signatures indicate the base is at full operational capacity. Life support? Bill asked. I nodded. Active. Environmental systems are running. Could someone have reactivated it remotely to prepare for our arrival? Samantha suggested, though she didn't sound convinced. Bill shook his head. Without telling us? No, something's not right here. We suited up, quiet and focused. The walk to the base would take about 20 minutes in our EVA suits. Before we left, Bill reminded us of protocol. Standard approach procedures. Mark, you're on comms and readings. Samantha, you're with me. Keep your emergency oxygen ready just in case. The airlock cycled, and we stepped onto the lunar surface. Walking in the low gravity was always strange, no matter how many times I'd done it. Each bouncing step sent small clouds of dust rising and falling in perfect arcs. As we approached Bravo, the lit-up windows became clearer. Through our helmet visors, I could make out the outline of equipment inside, shadows moving behind the thick glass. Base should be powered down, Bill repeated, his voice tight in my earpiece. He checked his handheld scanner. Power signatures indicate full operation. The main airlock was located on the eastern side of the facility. When we reached it, I half expected to find it sealed or not working. Instead, the outside panel lit up as we approached. "It's recognizing our presence," I said, surprised. Bill paused for a second before pushing his gloved hand against the access panel. The outer door slid open smoothly, which I didn't expect. We stepped into the small chamber and the outer door shut behind us. The airlock worked perfectly, like someone had been taking care of it. When the inner door opened, we felt good, clean air waiting for us. "Atmosphere reads normal," I confirmed, checking my instruments. "Oxygen levels stable. No toxins detected." Bill nodded. "Helmets off, but keep your suits on until we've secured the area." We took our helmets off carefully. The air was breathable like my readings showed, but stale with a metallic taste to it. The main corridor had dim blue emergency lights running along it. I could hear equipment making a low noise in the background. Life support, air recyclers, water systems, all working like nobody had ever left this place. "This doesn't make sense," Samantha whispered, her voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet corridor. We moved deeper into the facility, reaching the common area. What we found there stopped us in our tracks. The room looked lived in. A table in the center held 3 mugs with the remnants of coffee in them. Food packages were stacked neatly on a counter, some opened and partially used. A tablet lay on the table beside one of the mugs. "Someone's been living here," Samantha whispered, picking up one of the mugs and examining it. I moved to the main computer terminal and activated it. The system came online immediately, no passwords required. I scrolled through the log entries and felt my stomach tighten. "Last entry was 18 months ago," I said, scanning the text. "Just says day 127, no response from mission control. Continuing observations of the anomaly." "What anomaly?" Bill asked, looking over my shoulder. I shook my head. "Doesn't specify. There's nothing else after that." Bill turned slowly, looking around the room with narrowed eyes. His hand moved right to where his gun would normally be, though we hadn't brought weapons on what was supposed to be a normal research mission. A soft thud came from somewhere deeper in the base. Bill raised his hand, telling us to be quiet. We stood still, listening. After a moment, there was another sound, something between a scrape and a shuffle. "I heard something move down there," Bill said quietly, pointing toward a corridor that led to the sleeping quarters and research labs. Samantha's eyes widened. "Could someone still be here after all this time?" I checked the life support readings on my tablet. System says it's supporting 6 people. 6? Bill's eyebrows rose. "That's impossible." Another sound came from the corridor, closer this time. Definitely footsteps. Bill straightened his shoulders and took a step toward the sound. "Stay behind me." We moved as a group toward the darkened corridor, with just the blue emergency lights to see by. The footsteps had stopped, but I could feel it now. We weren't alone in Moonbase Bravo. I froze in the mess hall doorway, not believing what I was seeing. Sitting at the table were 3 people who couldn't possibly exist. Ourselves. Another Bill, another Samantha, and another Mark, all wearing faded mission patches and looking just as shocked as we were. This other Mark had a thin face with dark circles under his eyes. His hair was too long and he had a patchy beard instead of his usual clean-shaven face. He stared at me with a look that made my skin crawl. "This is impossible," Bill whispered beside me, his hand instinctively reaching for a sidearm that wasn't there. Space missions didn't include weapons. The other Bill, the one with more gray hair and wrinkles around his eyes, slowly raised his hands. "We've been expecting you," he said. His voice sounded just like our commander's, but rougher, like he hadn't talked much recently. "We hoped you wouldn't come." Samantha grabbed my arm so hard I could feel her nails through my jumpsuit. Her face went completely white. "How?" she started, but couldn't seem to form the rest of the question. The other Samantha had her hair down and messy. She looked at our Samantha with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry you're here." I stepped forward. "Who are you people? Some kind of welcome crew? Is this some kind of psychological test?" The other Mark laughed without any humor. "That's exactly what I said. Word for word." He tapped his temple, still thinking like a scientist. "That won't last." Bill moved in front of Samantha and me. "Identify yourselves. Now." The other Bill sighed and got up. "We're Lunar Mission 23 crew. Commander William Anderson, Science Officer Mark Thompson, and Systems Specialist Samantha Bailey. We were sent away from Alpha 18 months ago because of a chemical leak." "That's us," our Bill said flatly. "Those are our names. Our mission designation." "Yes," the other Bill, past Bill, I would come to call him, nodded. "We're you, or you're us. Time works differently here." Past Samantha wiped her eyes and spoke through her tears. "We were told to divert to Bravo, just like you. Our module crashed after landing. We've been stranded here ever since." My mind raced through possible explanations. Hallucinations from oxygen deprivation, some kind of elaborate hoax, clones, twins, imposters. None made sense. I pulled out my tablet and accessed the mission database. If these people were who they claimed to be, there should be records. I searched for Lunar Mission 23 and found it immediately. I felt sick as I read the report. "According to this," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears, "Lunar Mission 23 was lost with all hands 18 months ago when their module experienced catastrophic failure during landing at Moon Base Bravo. Declared dead," past Mark said, his eyes darting around nervously. "Makes sense. No one could have survived that crash." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We're you from the past. Time works differently here. You'll see." Our Bill took a step back. "We need to discuss this privately," he said to Samantha and me. We went back to the corridor outside the mess hall and stood close together. "They can't be us," Samantha whispered. "It's not possible." "Agreed," Bill said, "but they know our mission details, our names, and they're physically identical to us, just older, more worn down." I ran my hand through my short hair, trying to think clearly. If the base was abandoned 3 years ago, who's been maintaining it? The life support systems are running perfectly. The power is on. Someone's been living here. "Them, apparently," Bill said, glancing back toward the mess hall. "But how? And why tell us they're us from the past? It makes no sense." "We need to contact Mission Control," I said. "Request immediate extraction. Once the chemical leak at Alpha is cleared, we could relocate there instead." Bill nodded. "I'll try to establish communications again. The signal's been spotty since we landed." "What if they're telling the truth?" Samantha asked quietly. "What if time really is broken here somehow?" I wanted to dismiss the idea outright, but after what we'd just seen, I couldn't. Then we need to figure out what's causing it and how to fix it. But first, we need more information. We returned to the mess hall, keeping our distance from our doppelgangers. Past Bill seemed to understand our caution and didn't push. "You have questions," he said. "That's natural. Ask whatever you want." "If you're us from the past," Bill began, "how are you here now? Wouldn't that create a paradox?" Past Mark laughed again, that same humorless sound. "Paradoxes are the least of our problems. The normal rules don't apply here." "What happened to your module?" I asked. Past Bill and past Samantha exchanged a look that made my stomach tighten. "It crashed during landing," past Bill explained. "Despite Samantha's best efforts, the guidance systems failed at the last minute. We barely made it out alive." "But our landing was perfect," Samantha protested. Past Samantha looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "So was mine," she whispered. For the next few hours, we questioned them about their experiences at Bravo. Their answers were detailed but often cryptic, as if they were holding back crucial information. They described months of isolation, failed rescue attempts, and strange phenomena they couldn't explain. Communications with Earth are unreliable, Past Bill told us. Sometimes messages get through, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they arrive before they're sent. As night came, or what we called night on our lunar schedule, Bill got a weak connection with Mission Control. The message was full of static, but we understood enough to know the situation at Alpha wasn't fixed yet. No one could come get us anytime soon. I tried to sleep that night in the crew quarters our duplicates had given us, in a part of the base far from their rooms. My mind kept going back to the impossible meeting, looking for logical explanations, but not finding any. A huge explosion woke me up suddenly. The whole base shook, and alarms started blaring through all the hallways. I jumped out of bed, running into Bill and Samantha in the hall. "What was that?" Samantha asked, her voice tight with fear. "Sounded like it came from outside," Bill said, already moving toward the EVA prep room. "Suit up, now." We put on our pressure suits quickly and smoothly, though my hands shook as I secured my helmet. Within minutes, we were cycling through the airlock and stepping onto the lunar surface. I stopped dead in my tracks at what I saw. Our lunar module, which we had landed safely just 3 days ago, was on fire. In the vacuum of space, the fire burned without making a sound, destroying our only way off this place. Broken metal and debris lay scattered across the lunar surface, some pieces still glowing red hot. "That's impossible," Samantha whispered through the comm. "I checked all systems before we left. Everything was nominal." "It was perfect," came a voice from behind us. Past Bill had suited up and followed us outside, just like ours was, until it wasn't. I turned to look at him. I could see his face through his helmet visor. He didn't look surprised, just resigned. "It always happens," he said, gesturing toward the burning wreckage. "Now you're trapped too." The flames bounced off his visor as he talked. I looked back at what was left of our only way home and felt sick to my stomach. We were stuck on Moonbase Bravo, with copies of ourselves and a mystery that made no scientific sense. As the flames started dying out in the oxygen-starved environment, I realized our problem was way worse than just a broken ship. Something wasn't right about this place. Something that didn't follow the rules of physics and maybe even time. And now we were trapped here, just like our copies had been for the past 18 months. After the shock of watching our lunar module burn under the moon's empty sky, we went back inside Moonbase Bravo in stunned silence. I checked my watch, not even 24 hours since we got here, and we'd already lost our only way home. The next week went by in a blur of confusion and growing worry. We fell into a nervous routine, sharing the base with our past selves while trying to keep things somewhat normal. Bill set up rules that kept our group apart from theirs when possible, but the base's small space made it impossible to stay completely separated. I sat at the small desk in my room, typing on the tablet as I updated our ship's log. Writing everything down helped me stay focused when everything else felt like it was falling apart. "Day 7 at Moonbase Bravo," I typed. "Module explosion continues to match the pattern described by the other crew." I paused, still uncomfortable with calling them our past selves. "Supplies remain adequate. Water recycling at 97% efficiency. Air quality nominal. No rescue communication from Earth despite repeated attempts." I saved the entry and leaned back in my chair. The quarters were Spartan. A narrow bed, the desk, a small storage locker, and not much else. The walls were standard issue gray composite material, but someone had drawn small marks in the corner near the ceiling. Looking closer, I realized they were tally marks, like someone counting days. Exactly 18 months worth of days. A knock on my door pulled me back to reality. "Come in," I called. The door slid open and past Mark stood in the hallway. His hair stuck up at odd angles and his eyes had that jumpy look of someone who hadn't slept in days. "I need to show you something," he said without preamble. I hesitated. Of all our duplicates, past Mark was the one who made me most uncomfortable. Looking at him was like seeing a broken version of myself, a preview of what might happen if we stayed here too long. "What is it?" I asked, not moving from my seat. "The equations. I've been working on the equations." He held up his tablet, the screen filled with complex formulas and diagrams. "You need to understand what's happening to us." I glanced at my watch. The weekly briefing with both crews was scheduled in 15 minutes. "Can this wait until after the meeting?" "No." Past Mark stepped inside without invitation and closed the door. "They don't want to hear it. Past Bill thinks I'm losing my mind, but I'm the only one seeing clearly." I stood up, maintaining some distance between us. "Seeing what clearly?" "It's a time loop," he said, tapping furiously at his tablet to bring up a diagram. "The base sits on some kind of anomaly. Look at these energy readings I've been taking." The screen showed a pulsing wave pattern with spikes occurring at regular intervals. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "Quantum distortions. They're strongest at the center of the base and weaken as you move outward." He pulled up another screen. "When you crashed, like we did, it completed the circuit." "Circuit?" "The loop needs energy to maintain itself. The crashes provide that energy." He looked up at me, his eyes wide. "Don't you see? It's feeding on us, on the patterns we create." A second knock interrupted us. Bill stood in the doorway, his expression tightening when he saw Past Mark. "Meeting's starting early," he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. Past Mark held his tablet to his chest. "I was just explaining." "You can explain to everyone," Bill cut him off. "Let's go." I followed them down the hall to the common area where both crews had gathered around the large table. Samantha sat next to Past Samantha, both women looking down at their hands. Past Bill stood at the head of the table, waiting for us. "Now that we're all here," Past Bill began once we'd taken our seats, "I think it's time we discussed our situation more frankly." Bill leaned forward. "I've been wanting to ask you some questions." Past Bill nodded. "I know. The chemical leak at Alpha," Bill said. "Was it real?" A heavy silence fell over the room. Past Bill exchanged a look with Past Samantha before answering. "No," he said finally. "There was no leak. It was an excuse to divert you here, just as it diverted us 18 months ago." Samantha looked up quickly. "Then who sent the order? Who diverted us?" Past Samantha wouldn't meet her eyes. "We did. We will. It's all part of the loop." "That doesn't make sense," I said. "How could you send us a message before you even knew we existed?" Past Mark laughed. His laugh made the hair on my neck stand up. "Time doesn't work normally here. Cause and effect get all mixed up." "I don't believe you," Bill said flatly. Mission Control confirmed the diversion. I pulled out my tablet. "I can check the communication logs. Every message is archived with source metadata." No one stopped me as I accessed the system and pulled up the logs from the day of our arrival. I scrolled through until I found the diversion order. "This can't be right," I muttered, checking the transmission source code. "What is it?" Bill asked. I looked up, my mouth dry. "The diversion order, it originated from Bravo, not Mission Control. Someone at this base sent the message that brought us here." Past Bill nodded slowly. "The same thing happened to us. We found the same log entry after our crash." "But who sent it?" Samantha asked, her voice tight with frustration. "We don't know," Past Samantha said. "The loop continues, with or without our understanding." The meeting went on for another hour, with Past Bill telling us what they'd found out during their 18 months at Bravo. They'd tried to leave multiple times, but each try ended with equipment breaking down or weird accidents. They could talk to Earth sometimes, but the signal got worse over time. When the meeting finished, I needed to get out of the stuffy air inside. After Bill said it was okay, I put on my suit and went outside to check out the wreckage of our module. The moon was quiet as I walked to the crash site. Our module was all bent and broken, with parts spread across the gray dust. About 50 yards past it, I could see older, broken stuff, what was left of past Bill's craft. I walked carefully around both crash sites, taking photos and measurements. The way the parts were laid out caught my eye. I marked where the main pieces from both crashes were on my tablet map, then put one map on top of the other. The match was exact, way too exact to be random. Every piece of our broken module lined up perfectly with a piece from the older crash, like they were the same thing seen at different times. I stood there on the moon, looking at what my tablet showed. It made me dizzy to think about it. If Pastmark was right about the time loop, if we were really stuck in some kind of time problem. I noticed something move. Another person in a spacesuit was heading toward the base entrance, walking awkwardly like they were in a hurry on the moon. I could tell it was Pastmark from his suit markings. When I got back to the base 30 minutes later, an alarm was going off through the hallways. I hurried through decontamination and found Bill and Samantha running toward the crew quarters. "What's happening?" I called, hurrying to catch up. "It's Pastmark," Bill shouted over his shoulder. "Something's wrong." We reached the past crew's quarters and found Past Bill trying to override the door lock. Terrible screams came from inside the room, Pastmark's voice, raw with fear. The door slid open and we all rushed inside. Pastmark was on his knees in the corner, clawing at the walls with his bare hands. Blood streaked the gray surface where his nails had broken against the hard material. "We need to get out!" he screamed, not seeming to notice our arrival. "We need to get out before it happens again!" Past Bill and Bill managed to hold him down as he fought against them, his eyes crazy and not seeing anything. "Before what happens again?" I asked, helping to hold him still while Samantha retrieved a sedative from the medical kit. Mark looked at me, his eyes wide with fear. "Before we become them," he whispered, his bloody fingers clutching at my jumpsuit. "Before we send the message, before we complete the loop." As the sedative took effect and Pastmark's grip loosened, I looked at the wall where he'd been clawing. Among the bloody streaks were words scratched into the surface. 19 times. I turned to ask Past Bill what it meant, but he was already looking at me with an expression that made me unable to speak. He knew I'd figure out what it meant eventually. 2 weeks went by at Moon Base Bravo. I couldn't stop thinking about the bloody words Pastmark had scratched into his wall. 19 times. Every time I asked Past Bill about their meaning, he looked away and changed the subject. I sat at my desk, updating our log with the day's events. My fingers paused over the tablet, stuck on how to describe the way Pastmark's condition had changed. Deteriorated seemed too medical. Gotten worse didn't capture how scary his change was becoming right in front of us. Pastmark rarely slept anymore. He paced the corridors at all hours, his footsteps bouncing through the base's metal floors. The sound had become a constant background to our days, a steady reminder that something was very wrong here. When he wasn't walking, he was writing, covering any surface he could find with equations and diagrams. The walls near his room were now filled with math formulas, arrows connecting what looked like random variables, and the same phrases written over and over. Breaking the sequence, temporal divergence point, anomaly containment failure. His eyes had changed too. When we first arrived, there had been fear in them, mixed with hope that we might somehow help him. Now they looked darker whenever he looked at me. During meals, I'd catch him watching me from across the table, fork stopped halfway to his mouth, his look filled with such hatred and jealousy that it made my skin crawl. I started eating in my room or planning my meals to avoid him. Bill noticed, of course. He noticed everything. "You can't hide from him forever," he said to me one morning as I hurried away from the common area with my breakfast. "We're stuck here together." I slowed down to let him catch up. "I'm not hiding. I'm just giving him space." "He's fixating on you more each day," Bill said, keeping his voice low. "Past Bill says it happened before. The way he sees it, you're the variable that could change the equation." What does that even mean? I asked. Bill shook his head. I don't know, but we need to be careful. We started a regular check-in schedule with Mission Control after our first week here. The messages took hours to get through what past Bill called the interference, and the answers came back broken and choppy. It was our only way to talk to Earth, where time was normal and maybe get rescued someday. I went with Bill to the communications room that afternoon while he sent our daily update. Like every other day, he added an urgent request for emergency pickup. The reply came back 8 hours later, with the voice cutting out every few words. Chemical situation at Alpha. Remains unresolved. Extraction not possible. Maintain position. Estimate 2 more weeks. Sending supplies. Bill shut off the transmission and leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. Do you believe them? I asked. What do you mean? The chemical leak, the 2-week timeline. What if these messages are part of it too, part of the loop? Bill stared at the blank screen. I've been wondering the same thing. That evening, I found past Samantha alone in the observatory. Unlike past Mark, she'd grown quieter over the past 2 weeks, withdrawing into herself. She sat with her knees pulled up to her chest, looking out at the stars. Mind if I join you? I asked. She pointed to the empty chair next to her. Close up, I could see the dark circles under her eyes and how her jumpsuit looked too big on her. She wasn't eating enough. Do you ever wonder if the stars are the same? She asked without looking at me. If we're seeing the same sky everyone else is, or if even that's different here. I hadn't thought about it, I admitted. She pulled a small notebook from her pocket and held it out to me. I found this yesterday. It's my journal from when we first arrived. I took it carefully. The cover was worn, the pages dog-eared from frequent handling. I stopped writing after the first 3 months, she said. It felt pointless to keep track anymore. Time becomes meaningless here. I opened the journal. Her handwriting filled page after page, neat at first, then getting more hurried and messy. Dates were at the top of each entry, though sometimes she'd crossed them out and rewritten them, like she'd lost track. Did you receive messages from Mission Control too? I asked, looking up from the journal. About extraction? She gave a small, sad smile. 2 more weeks, always 2 more weeks. And the supplies they promised? Never came. She turned to face me fully. Have you figured it out yet? What the 19 means? My chest tightened. No. You will. She looked back at the stars. Samantha already suspects. I can see it in her face when she looks at me. She knows she's becoming me. I wanted to argue, to tell her our Samantha was fine, but I couldn't get the words out. The truth was, Samantha had been quieter lately too, watching her past self with growing worry. The next morning, I found a new addition to past Mark's wall equations, a circle with 19 hash marks around its edge, with an arrow pointing to where he'd written Mark 19 and Mark 18. Beside it, he'd scratched loop integrity failing. Sequence must be broken. What are you working on? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He spun around, eyes wide with surprise, before narrowing in suspicion. You're studying my work. I'm just curious, I said, taking a step back. Maybe I can help. Help? He let out a harsh laugh. You're the problem, you and all the others. What others? I pressed. The 18 before us? His face changed, like he suddenly realized something. So you do know. You're just pretending. He moved closer and lowered his voice. Which one sent you? Was it Mark 17? Did he warn you about me? No one sent me, I said, backing away. I'm just trying to understand what's happening here. Liar, he hissed. You stole my research. You're using it to manipulate the loop. I turned and walked away quickly, his accusations following me down the hall. When I got to the common area, I found Bill and past Bill drinking coffee in tense silence. Past Mark is getting worse, I said without preamble. Bill nodded. Past Bill was just telling me. Past Bill looked tired, with more wrinkles around his eyes than he had 2 weeks ago. It happens every time. The scientist breaks first, too analytical, too aware of the impossibility. Every time? I repeated. How many times has this happened? Past Bill's eyes met mine, then looked away. You saw the wall. That night at dinner, all 6 of us sat together at the large table in the mess hall. The silence felt uncomfortable, broken only by the scrape of utensils against plates. Samantha sat next to her past self, both women picking at their food without interest. Bill and Past Bill ate steadily, watching Past Mark from the corners of their eyes. I kept my head down, focusing on my meal, but I could feel Past Mark watching me. When I finally looked up, his eyes were on me, his fork squeezed so tight in his hand that his knuckles had turned white. You know what I realized today? He said, his voice unnaturally loud in the quiet room. He's reading my notes. He pointed his fork at me. Every night when I sleep, he goes through my research. No one's reading your notes, Mark, Past Bill said firmly. I've seen him! Past Mark's voice rose. He's stealing my work to use it against me. That's not true, I said. I haven't touched your research. Liar! Past Mark suddenly lunged across the table, fork aimed at my face like a weapon. I jerked backward, my chair tipping over as I fell. The fork missed my eye by inches, slashing across my cheek instead. Bill and Past Bill jumped into action, grabbing Past Mark and pulling him away. He fought against them, yelling wildly, his face twisted with anger. Samantha pressed a napkin to my bleeding cheek while Past Samantha watched with a blank stare, like she knew what was happening already. Later that night, after they gave Past Mark something to calm him down and locked him in his room, the 4 of us, Bill, Past Bill, Samantha, and I, met in the observatory to talk about what happened. We need to restrict contact between the crews, Bill said, his voice firm. Especially between Mark and Past Mark. Past Bill nodded. We expected this. It's why we tried to prepare you. Prepare us for what? Samantha asked, her voice sharp with fear and frustration. What aren't you telling us? Past Bill and Past. Samantha exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. We'd hoped this cycle might be different, Past Samantha said quietly. What cycle? I demanded. What is the 19 about? No one answered. The silence stretched until Bill broke it with a sigh. Get some rest, everyone. We'll establish new protocols in the morning. I couldn't sleep that night. My cheek hurt where Past Mark's fork had cut me, but it was all the questions without answers that kept me awake. Around 3 a.m., I gave up and decided to check out the parts of the base we hadn't fully looked through yet. The lower level had storage rooms and maintenance areas. Most were unlocked and filled with what you'd expect: food supplies, water recycling equipment, spare parts for the life support systems. But at the end of the hallway, I found a door that wouldn't open with my access code. I tried Bill's override code, which he'd given me for emergencies. The lock clicked, and the door opened to show a small room with storage lockers along the walls. The air inside smelled stale, like nobody had been there for months or longer. I opened the first locker and found a tablet and a handwritten journal. The log was labeled Lunar Mission 23, Commander William Anderson. It was Bill's handwriting, but the dates were wrong. According to this log, it had been written 18 months ago when our copies arrived. The next locker had another set of identical logs, but with small differences in the entries. Slight changes in wording, in events, in reactions, and then another set and another. By the time Samantha found me, I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by 18 sets of mission logs, all describing the same events with minor differences, each one stopping suddenly. Mark? Her voice was barely above a whisper. What is all this? I looked up at her, the truth finally sinking in. We're not the second crew to arrive here, I said. We're the 19th. She picked up one of the journals, looking through pages that talked about things we'd already gone through. The diversion to Bravo, finding duplicates, the module crash. "Look at the handwriting," I said. "They're all from different versions of us." "But how?" she asked. "The anomaly past Mark keeps talking about. It's not just bending time. It's repeating it over and over, each cycle slightly different from the last." Samantha sat down beside me, her face pale in the dim light. "And it always ends the same way?" I pointed to the abrupt endings of each journal. "Something happens, something none of them live to write about." "Past Mark knows," she said. "That's why he's losing his mind. And past Bill and past Samantha know too. They've been trying to warn us without telling us directly." We sat in silence, surrounded by the evidence of 18 failed attempts to break free of whatever held us in its grip at Moonbase Bravo. 18 versions of ourselves who had lived and died here, trapped in an endless cycle. "What do we do now?" Samantha asked finally. I had no answer for her. The cut on my cheek hurt, but it was nothing compared to how badly I felt inside. We weren't just stuck on the moon with no way home. We were stuck in time, following a path that other versions of us had already walked. And somewhere in the base, past Mark was already planning his next move, thinking I was the enemy he needed to get rid of to break the cycle. When I saw how much he hated me as he came at me with that fork, I knew this was just the start of our problems. Finding 18 old mission logs killed any hope that we were the first ones stuck here. Samantha and I stayed up all night reading through each journal, checking how each cycle was different, hunting for anything that could help us escape this loop. By morning, we had nothing, just 18 copies of the same bad dream playing out slightly differently each time. When we showed Bill what we found, he looked like he'd instantly gotten way older. "We need to tell the others," he said finally. Past Bill took the news really calmly, like he'd known it was coming. Past Samantha just nodded with blank eyes. Past Mark, though, went completely off the rails after that. His paranoia turned into full-on psychosis. "You're all part of it," he screamed during dinner that evening, throwing his tray against the wall. "Puppets in the game, every one of you." Over the following weeks, his episodes got worse and more violent. He ripped apart his room, covered every surface with increasingly crazy equations, and blamed everyone, especially me, of messing up his attempts to break the loop. 1 month after we got to Moonbase Bravo, I helped Bill move a steel medical cabinet against the wall of the converted medical bay. We'd spent the morning making the room stronger, taking out anything past Mark could use as a weapon, and putting in a window in the door to watch him. "That should hold," Bill said, stepping back to inspect our work. "Pass me that screwdriver." I handed it to him, watching as he secured the cabinet to the floor bolts. Turning the medical bay into a locked-up holding area felt like crossing a line we couldn't go back from, like we were finally admitting that one of us was beyond help. "What triggered his last attack?" I asked. Bill tightened the final bolt before answering. He saw Samantha making tally marks on her arm, claimed she was signaling to the others about his progress. Yesterday's incident had been the worst yet. Past Mark had lunged at Samantha in the corridor, grabbing her by the throat and slamming her against the wall. He'd been screaming about conspiracies and signals while his fingers tightened around her neck. If Bill and Past Bill hadn't pulled him off, he might have killed her. "We need a sedation schedule," Bill said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Something to keep him calm but not completely out of it. Past Bill said they tried total sedation last time, and it only made him worse when they brought him out. Past Bill stood in the doorway watching us work. The weeks had drawn deeper lines into his face. He looked tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. "We had to do the same thing," he said, nodding toward our modifications. "It always progresses this way. The scientist breaks first, then the pilot, then..." He trailed off. "Then what?" I asked. He shook his head. "You'll see soon enough." Through the window, I could see past Mark, strapped to the bed. The drugs had worn off enough that his eyes were open, but he wasn't fighting against the restraints anymore. His lips kept moving, mumbling equations and theories nobody else could hear. "How long did you keep him like this?" Bill asked. Past Bill looked at his crewmate. "Until the end." The thought made my stomach twist. I turned away from the window, unable to look at the man with my face who had gone crazy. I didn't want to see what I might become. I left Bill and Past Bill talking about sedation protocols and went to find Samantha. She hadn't shown up for breakfast, and I was worried about her. Since the attack, she'd pulled away even more. I found her in the observatory, sitting cross-legged on the floor by the big viewing window. Her back was to me, but I could tell from her shoulders that she knew I was there. "Breakfast is ready if you want some," I offered, stopping a few feet behind her. She didn't turn around. "I'm not hungry." I moved closer and sat down beside her. That's when I saw what she was doing. With a black marker, she was drawing careful tally marks on her left forearm, 31 identical lines. "Samantha," I said carefully, "what are those?" She finished drawing the last mark before answering. "Days. 1 month at Bravo." The marks were neat, lined up perfectly, like she'd been counting them for a long time. "Past Samantha showed me her identical marks yesterday," she said, finally looking up at me. Her eyes held a distant quality that made me uneasy. "I'm becoming her." "No, you're not," I insisted. "You're still you." She gave me a small, sad smile. "That's what I would have said a month ago. But look." She rolled up her right sleeve to reveal more marks, these less precise, scattered across her skin like frantic scratches. "I don't remember making these. I found them this morning." My chest tightened. "Maybe you did it in your sleep." "Past Samantha has them too, in exactly the same pattern." She traced the chaotic marks with her finger. "She doesn't remember making them either." I didn't know what to say to that. More and more stuff kept showing up that proved we were stuck in this crazy cycle, and each new thing we found was worse than the one before. "Have you seen what Bill's been doing?" she asked. I shook my head. "He spends hours in the chapel now, reading the Bible, talking to Past Bill about what it all means." She let her sleeve fall back into place. "They think God is testing us." I'd noticed Bill wasn't around during off hours, but didn't know where he went. The base had a small chapel area in the rec room, just a quiet corner with some religious books rather than anything fancy. I'd never seen Bill care about religion before. Later that day, I found him sitting at a small table with an old Bible open in front of him. Different color highlights marked several passages, and the margins had notes written in different handwriting styles. "Mind if I join you?" I asked. He looked up, seeming almost embarrassed to be caught. "I was just reading." I sat across from him. "Samantha mentioned you've been spending time here." Bill nodded, his finger running along a highlighted verse. "Past Bill showed me this. Look." He turned the Bible so I could see. Revelation 27, highlighted in faded yellow ink. "And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison." All these highlighted sections, Bill continued, they're about eternal punishment, being trapped in cycles of suffering. This one was marked by the crew before Past Bill's team. He flipped to another page. And this one by the crew before them. Each passage was about the same thing. People stuck in endless suffering, going through the same pain over and over again. Different groups who'd been here before had found these verses, marked them up, and written their thoughts in the margins. "What do you think it means?" I asked. Bill closed the Bible slowly. "I think whatever has us trapped here is beyond our understanding. Past Bill believes it's a test. I'm starting to think he might be right." I left Bill to think and went to do what I did best. Gather data, look for patterns, find physical explanations when spiritual ones didn't work for me. Over the next few days, I checked out every part of the base. What I found made no sense. Some parts of Bravo looked way older than others, with wear marks that would take decades to form, not just the 3 years since the base was supposedly empty. The fixes on some walls used materials from different time periods, some from our time, others that looked older than the first moon landings. The weirdest parts had tech I couldn't even name, stuff that looked more advanced than anything we have on Earth right now. Some walls had circuit designs made with materials I'd never seen before. I was looking at one of these strange sections when Past Bill found me. "Figured it out yet?" he asked, leaning against the corridor wall. I shook my head. This shouldn't be possible. Some of this technology, it's not ours. "Not yet," Past Bill corrected. He gestured for me to follow him. "There's something you should see." He took me to a maintenance room we hardly ever used. The floor panels were pulled up, showing the base's foundation underneath. Right in the middle, stuck in the concrete, was a weird metal object about the size of a basketball. Its surface shined with a faint blue light that blinked in a steady pattern. "What is that?" I asked, kneeling down for a closer look. "We don't know exactly," Past Bill said. "But we have a theory. The base exists in multiple times simultaneously. Whatever caused this trapped pieces of reality together like layers of rock." He pointed to the object. "We think it started with this. The original construction crew found something beneath the lunar surface and brought it up. Something that shouldn't have been disturbed. The object glowed a bit brighter as I moved closer, its pulses getting faster. It reacts to proximity," Past Bill explained, "and it emits energy readings unlike anything in our scientific understanding. We've tried moving it, destroying it. Nothing works." I leaned back, processing this information. So this thing, whatever it is, created the time loop? Or it's a physical manifestation of the loop itself? Past Bill shrugged. "Your guess is as good as mine." Past Mark had theories about quantum entanglement, about the object existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, but he went insane before he could figure it out, I finished. Past Bill nodded grimly, like all the versions before him. I stared at the pulsing object, trying to make sense of its existence. If we're the 19th crew to experience this, where are all the others? Why only one duplicate crew at a time? "The loop recycles," Past Bill said quietly. "When a cycle ends, it begins again with variations. The previous versions get absorbed somehow, except for one crew that remains as witnesses for the next. And that's you this time." "Yes." "What happens to you when the cycle resets?" I asked. Past Bill's face got dark. "I don't know. None of us do. Maybe we cease to exist. Maybe we become part of the next loop in some way we don't understand." I thought of the 18 sets of logs we'd found, each one ending abruptly. How does it end, the cycle? He turned away from the object. I couldn't see his face clearly anymore. "You already know too much. Knowledge only speeds up the progression." "Past Mark knew," I pressed. "That's why he broke." "Yes." Past Bill headed for the door. "And now you know too. Be careful what you do with that knowledge, Mark." After he left, I stayed for a while, looking at the weird object as it blinked with strange light. It seemed crazy to think it existed outside normal time, creating this bubble where past, present, and maybe future all mixed together. But the proof was all around us. The duplicate crew, the weird technology, and how the base itself showed different time periods all mashed together. When I went back to the main level, I found Samantha still in the observatory. She hadn't moved in hours, just staring out at the moon's surface. "Did you know," she said without looking at me, "that I can sometimes see movement out there? Shadows that shouldn't exist." I sat beside her. "What kind of shadows?" "People in pressure suits." She pressed her palm against the thick glass. "I think they're the others. The ones who came before." The thought made me feel uneasy. "Have you told Bill?" She nodded. "He says Past Bill sees them too. Says they're like ripples in time. Finally, she turned to face me. What did you find today? I can tell you found something. I told her about the object beneath the floor, about past Bill's theory of merged realities. Do you think we can break it? She asked when I'd finished. The cycle? I don't know. 18 crews before us have tried and failed. She looked back out at the lunar surface. Maybe we're different. Maybe we can do something they couldn't. I wanted to believe her. But as I looked at the empty landscape outside, I saw what she'd talked about. A shadow moving where it shouldn't be, the outline of a spacesuit that looked wavy for a second before it disappeared. I finally understood why past Mark had lost his mind. The truth was just too much for anyone to handle. We were stuck in a time loop, trapped with pieces of our past and future selves, going around and around this alien thing that made no sense. And somewhere in the base, locked up in our homemade cell, past Mark kept saying his equations over and over. I wondered how long until I ended up just like him. 6 weeks into our imprisonment at Moonbase Bravo, the alarm went off through the corridors. I shot up in bed as the noise woke me up and quickly put on my boots. The red emergency lights flashed along with the siren, turning the walls red. I grabbed the small electric prod we'd made from spare parts. We needed it for past Mark, who kept getting more violent. The alarm could only mean one thing: he had gotten out. The corridor outside my room was empty. I ran toward the medical bay, the prod held tight in my hand. We'd been taking turns giving past Mark his meds, sedatives to keep him calm, but not completely out. Today was past Bill's turn. I turned the corner and stopped. Past Bill was lying face down on the metal floor, blood coming from the back of his head. I knelt beside him and checked for a pulse. He was alive but knocked out cold. "Bill!" I yelled, hoping our commander was nearby. No answer came. The medical bay door was open with its lock smashed to pieces. Inside, the restraints on the bed where we'd kept past Mark were empty. The medicine cabinet was open with its stuff thrown all over the floor, broken vials and crushed syringes everywhere. I could track where past Mark went by following the mess: dented walls, tipped over equipment, and blood smears where he cut himself getting free. I walked carefully behind this trail, holding the prod out in front of me. He was heading toward the communications room. "Mark?" Samantha's voice came over my personal communicator. "What's happening?" "Past Mark's escaped," I whispered. "He attacked past Bill. I'm tracking him to the comms room. Where are you?" "Observatory with past Samantha. Bill's heading your way from the mess hall." "Stay put. Keep past Samantha with you." The communications room door was jammed shut when I reached it. Through the small window, I could see past Mark inside, his back to me as he hunched over the main console. His hands moved wildly across the controls, flipping switches and turning dials. His jumpsuit was torn and stained with blood, his hair messy and matted. I tried my access code on the panel. Nothing happened. Past Mark had overridden the system. "Past Mark," I called through the door. "Open up. We can talk about this." He turned around and I stepped back when I saw his face. His eyes looked almost completely black, with just a thin ring of color visible around the edges. Blood was smeared across his cheeks and forehead from cuts he got while getting away. His lips were dry and cracked, pulled into this weird expression that wasn't exactly a smile but wasn't really a snarl either. "I'm saving us all," he said, his voice hoarse. I finally figured it out. Behind him, the communications equipment lit up as he kept sending messages to Earth that would never get there properly. I heard footsteps and turned to see Bill running toward me with a metal bar in his hands. "He's barricaded himself in," I explained quickly. "Trying to send messages to Earth." Bill nodded with a serious look. "We need to get in there before he damages our only link to mission control." He looked at the door. "The manual override might work. Cover me." He went to a small panel next to the door and pried it open with a screwdriver from his pocket. Inside was the backup system that would work even if everything else was broken. Bill pulled a lever, and the door made a hissing sound as it unlocked. Past Mark heard it too. He grabbed a metal pipe from beside the console that used to be part of the room's ventilation. As the door slowly opened, he stood ready, looking tense and defensive. "Stay back," Bill warned me. "I'll go first." But I shoved past him. This was my duplicate, my responsibility. "Past Mark, put down the pipe. Whatever you're trying to do." "I know how to break the loop," he yelled, eyes wild and unfocused. "One of us has to die." He launched himself at me with frightening speed, swinging the pipe at my head. I ducked, feeling the wind of it passing inches above me. Bill tried to grab him from behind, but Past Mark twisted away with unnatural agility and struck him in the ribs. Bill stumbled back, gasping for breath. Past Mark turned his attention back to me. "You," he wheezed. "It has to be you." He swung again, and this time the pipe caught me on the shoulder. Pain exploded through my arm, but I managed to stay on my feet. We circled each other in the cramped space, knocking over equipment as we moved. A monitor crashed to the floor, glass shattering. The communications console sparked as Past Mark backed into it, dislodging connections. "The loop needs different energy to break," Past Mark said, his voice eerily calm compared to his frenzied movements. "Death energy, but not just any death. The right one." He lunged again, and we fought in the middle of all the broken equipment. He was way stronger than he looked, especially for someone so skinny. He was completely out of his mind, which gave him a crazy amount of strength I just couldn't keep up with. "Why me?" I gasped as we struggled. "Why not you?" His face came close to mine, so near I could smell the sour medication on his breath. "Because you're the mistake," he hissed. "You're the variable that shouldn't exist." He slammed me against the wall, pressing the pipe across my throat. I choked, trying to push him away, but his weight and the crushing pressure was too much. Black spots started showing up at the edges of my sight. My hand moved blindly along the wall, touching broken equipment, loose wires, then something sharp, a piece of glass from the broken monitor. I grabbed it, feeling it cut into my palm as I held it. Past Mark pushed harder, his face all twisted up. "It should be you," he wheezed. With my last bit of strength, I stuck the glass piece into his neck. His eyes got big in shock. The pressure on my throat was gone as he stumbled back, hands grabbing at the glass in his neck. Blood pumped between his fingers, bright red and scary fast. He tried to speak, but only made a wet, gurgling sound. Past Mark fell to his knees, then dropped face first onto the floor. Blood pooled under him, spreading across the metal floor. His body twitched once, then stopped moving. I slid down the wall until I was sitting, unable to look away from my own dead face. I had just killed myself, a version of me from another point in the time loop. It felt so wrong and impossible. I turned and threw up. Bill knelt beside Past Mark, checking for a pulse. His face was pale. "You had no choice," he said quietly. "He would have killed you." I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. "What do we do now?" "We need to tell the others, and..." He looked down at the body. "We need to deal with this." Burying Past. Mark was weird. We wrapped his body in a sheet from the medical bay and carried it outside in our pressure suits. The moon didn't have any dirt to dig in, so we piled up moon rocks around him, a little way from the base entrance. Nobody talked while we worked. What could we even say? Past Bill had woken up but was still in the medical bay with a concussion. Past Samantha stood off to the side during our makeshift funeral, her face empty and far away. Samantha stayed close to her, touching her arm now and then, like she needed to check her other self was still real. As we put the last rocks over Past Mark's covered body, Samantha gasped. "Look," she said, pointing. Where we should have seen the white sheet between the rocks, something weird was happening. The fabric was getting see-through. Through it, we could see Past Mark's body doing the same thing, slowly fading until we could see the moon's surface right through him. What's happening? I asked, my voice sounding strange through the suit's comm system. The loop is reabsorbing him, came past Bill's voice through our comms. He'd insisted on monitoring the burial from the medical bay. When we die here, we don't stay dead. We become part of whatever's next. We watched in horror as past Mark's body completely disappeared, leaving just an empty sheet that also vanished a few minutes later. Even the blood on the fabric faded away, like he'd never been there at all. Back at the base, I showered for almost an hour, trying to wash away the feeling of past Mark's blood on my hands. I couldn't stop thinking about killing him. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw past Mark's face as he died. I saw myself dying when I looked at him. I got up and walked through the quiet hallways, ending up outside past Mark's old room. The room had been locked since his first violent outburst, when we'd moved him to the medical bay. Without thinking much, I typed in Bill's override code. The door slid open. Inside, the walls were covered with equations, diagrams, and scattered writing. Some directly on the walls, others on papers taped up in layers. The bed was against the wall with messy sheets. On the desk sat a leather-bound journal I knew was past Mark's logbook. I picked it up, pausing before opening it. This felt like I was snooping, even if it was technically my own stuff. But past Mark was gone, and his journal might have information that could help us escape this place. The early entries were normal. Daily reports, notes, theories about the base and the weird thing beneath it. But as I kept reading, the writing got messier, the theories crazier. Whole pages just had the same phrase written over and over: break the loop, break the loop, break the loop. Near the end of the journal, I found what I was looking for and what I was afraid to find. Detailed plans for killing his future self. Me. Diagrams of the communications room. Notes on when I'd probably be alone, easy to attack. Ideas for weapons, methods, opportunities. The final page had just one paragraph, written in surprisingly neat handwriting. If you're reading this, I've failed, and you've killed me instead. That's acceptable. Death is the key. I'm almost certain of it now. The loop needs death energy to reset, but it also needs the right kind of death. Not suicide, not accident. Blood sacrifice. Willing or unwilling. If I'm right, my death will cause a change in the pattern. Watch for it. Be ready. I closed the journal, my hands shaking. Past Mark hadn't attacked me in a mindless rage. He had deliberately tried to create what he thought was a needed death to break the cycle. And I had given him exactly what he wanted. I went back to my room and stayed awake all night. I kept thinking about how killing past Mark might be changing our time loop, and what it meant for the rest of us stuck in Moonbase Bravo. 2 months after arriving at Moonbase Bravo, I woke to Samantha's screams. The sound jerked me from a dreamless sleep, raw and primal in a way that went straight past thinking and pushed me into action. I threw off my blanket and ran barefoot through the cold metal corridors, following her cries to the common bathroom. Samantha stood in the doorway, hands pressed against her mouth, body stiff with shock. Inside the bathroom, water from the shower spray mixed with dark red streaks that swirled toward the drain. Past, Samantha lay crumpled on the tile floor, her skin pale white against the red blood pooling around her wrists. A sharp piece of mirror shined under the bright bathroom lights, its edge stained red. Bill arrived seconds after me, pushing past us both. He crouched next to past Samantha, checking for a pulse he wouldn't find. The water kept falling, splashing over his shoulder as he leaned into the shower stall. "Turn it off," he said quietly. I reached in and twisted the knob. The sudden silence made everything worse. Now we could hear Samantha's ragged breathing behind us. "She told me yesterday she couldn't do it anymore," Samantha whispered, watching the loop continue, knowing what comes next. I turned to look at her. She was frozen, staring at her own dead body, one hand mindlessly rubbing her wrist. Her fingers went round and round over the same spot where past Samantha had cut her veins. Bill got up, water dripping from his clothes. "We need to move her." "Where?" I asked. The question felt stupid the moment it left my mouth. We had no morgue, no proper place for a body. "Same as before," Bill said. We wrapped past Samantha in a shower curtain, making sure not to look at her face with those awful cuts on her wrists. As we carried her through the hallways to the airlock, I kept looking over at Samantha, who walked a few steps behind us. She couldn't take her eyes off the bundle we were carrying. Outside on the moon's surface, we put past Samantha next to the pile of rocks where we'd placed past Mark 2 weeks ago. The pile looked smaller now. The rocks had moved a bit after his body disappeared. We stood in a half circle around the wrapped body, our breaths making fog on our helmet visors. Nobody said anything. What could we say that we hadn't already said when past Mark died? Through the clear plastic of the shower curtain, I watched it start. The same weird change that had happened to past Mark's body. Past Samantha's body started to fade, her edges turning see-through. In just minutes, we could see the moon dust through her chest, her face until only the bloody curtain was left. Then that disappeared too. Back inside the base, Samantha went straight to her room without saying anything. Bill and I cleaned the bathroom without talking, washing away all the blood until it was completely gone, just like past Samantha's body on the surface. "Do you think that'll happen to all of us?" I asked as I wrung out a mop. Bill looked up from scrubbing the shower drain. "I think it happens to anyone who dies in the loop. They get recycled. That's what past Mark was trying to tell us, about death energy feeding the loop." Bill nodded slowly. He might have been onto something. Past Bill has theories too. "You've been talking to him a lot. He understands this place better than any of us." Bill stood up, wincing at the stiffness in his knees. "I'm worried about Samantha." "Me too." We finished cleaning in silence. The bathroom looked normal again, with no sign of what happened there hours earlier. Even the mirror had been replaced. Bill found a spare in storage. No one mentioned the missing piece that past Samantha had used to end her life. Over the next few days, Samantha hardly spoke. She spent most of her time in the observatory, staring at Earth through the large window, or writing in a journal she wouldn't let anyone see. When she did interact with us, she acted more and more weird. At dinner 4 days after past Samantha's death, I placed a bowl of reconstituted soup in front of her. "Here you go, Samantha." She didn't respond, staring at the table. "Samantha?" I repeated. "Past Samantha?" Bill tried, his voice gentle. She looked up immediately. "Yes?" I felt a cold feeling inside me that surprised me. Samantha blinked, looking confused as she realized what had just happened. I'm sorry," she stammered. "I don't know why Bill reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "It's okay. We're all struggling." But it wasn't okay. Something was happening to Samantha. Something beyond normal grief or stress. She was losing her grip on her own identity, slipping into the role of the woman whose body we'd watched dissolve into nothingness. That night, unable to sleep, I went looking for Bill. The base felt different with only 5 of us left, emptier and too quiet. I checked the command center, the labs, and finally headed toward the small chapel area in the corner of the rec room. I found Bill sitting with past Bill. They both looked up when I walked in, their identical faces looking really tired. A Bible lay open between them on the small table, pages marked with dozens of colorful tabs. "Mark," Bill acknowledged me with a nod. "Couldn't sleep?" "Too much on my mind." I sat down across from them. "What are you two doing?" Past Bill closed the Bible gently, comparing notes. He looked worse than Bill, thinner, with darker circles under his eyes and more gray in his beard. Whatever was happening at Moonbase Bravo made people age faster than normal. "I've been documenting every loop variation," Past Bill explained, pushing a thick notebook toward me. Different configurations, different outcomes, looking for patterns. I opened the notebook. Page after page of notes, diagrams, and timelines filled the book. Past Bill had made a detailed system for keeping track of events across multiple cycles. "You think this is a test?" I asked, remembering what Bill had told me about Past Bill's religious interpretations. Past Bill nodded slowly. "God aliens, some cosmic intelligence. Something is testing us, forcing us to experience the same events with slight variations, watching how we respond." "And you've been recording all of it?" "As much as I can remember, yes." He took the notebook back, flipping to a specific page. "There's only one constant across all the loops I've experienced or heard about from previous crews." "What's that?" I asked. "When one version of each of us dies, the countdown begins." Bill leaned forward. "What countdown?" Past Bill looked between us, looking serious. "To the reset. When the past crew is gone, the present crew is next. Then the loop starts over. That's why past Samantha couldn't take it anymore," Bill said quietly. "She knew what was coming." Past Bill nodded. "She always breaks second. The scientist first, then the pilot, then..." He stopped talking, looking at Bill. "The commander," Bill finished for him. I tried to process what they were saying. "So, after Past Mark died, Past Samantha knew she would be next? That's why she killed herself?" "Yes and no," Past Bill said. "She knew it would happen, but not exactly how. Sometimes she gets sick, sometimes there's an accident. This time..." He closed his eyes briefly. "This time she chose her own way out." I thought about the piece of mirror, the precise cuts on her wrists. She made it quick. As quick as she could. Past Bill sighed heavily. "Now it's my turn." His flat tone freaked me out. "What do you mean?" "The pattern continues. 3 deaths, 3 variations." He looked directly at Bill. "You know what I'm asking." Bill looked at me for a long time, then gave a small nod. I left them to their quiet conversation, worried by what I'd heard but not sure what to do about it. The idea of a countdown started by the deaths of our duplicates kept me awake as I tried to sleep that night. Around 2 a.m., I heard movement in the hall outside my room. Soft footsteps passed my door, then came back 10 minutes later. I waited until they were gone, then got up to check it out. The base was dark, with only the emergency strips along the floor giving any light. I followed them toward the sleeping quarters where the remaining past crew members slept. As I got close to Past Bill's room, the door slid open, and Bill stepped out. He stopped dead when he saw me. In his hand were 2 medical syringes. His face was wet with tears. "I gave him peace," Bill confessed without my having to ask. "He asked me to. Said he'd done it before for others." I pushed past him into the room. Past Bill lay on his bed, eyes closed, hands folded on his chest. If not for the empty syringe on the bedside table, I might have thought he was sleeping. His face looked calm, without all the worry lines I was used to seeing. "Morphine?" I asked. Bill nodded. "Enough to stop his heart. Quick and painless." I should have felt horror, anger, something, but all I felt was a dull acceptance. The loop had claimed another of its players, right on schedule. "He was in pain," Bill said quietly. "Has been since the last cycle. Something happened to his back when they crashed. Their version of the module crash was worse than what would have happened to us. Would have happened if Past Mark hadn't warned us about the landing sequence flaw." Bill pocketed the unused syringe. "Small variation, just enough to keep it interesting, I guess." We stood together watching as Past Bill's body began the process we'd seen before. His hands and feet started turning see-through first, then it spread toward the middle of his body. Unlike the earlier deaths, We could see everything clearly now that we were in the bedroom without spacesuits or covers blocking our view. It was weird to watch. His face got blurry, then see-through, then completely disappeared. The blanket under him slowly flattened as his body vanished. The empty syringe stayed on the bed, the only thing showing he'd been there. 3 down, Bill said quietly, staring at the empty bed. Now the hard part begins. What do you mean? He turned to me, and I couldn't tell what he was thinking in the dim light. We're alone now. Just the 3 of us. No more guides, no more warnings. Maybe that's better, I suggested. Maybe we can break the pattern without them. Or maybe we're exactly where the loop wants us to be. Bill headed for the door. Get some sleep, Mark. Tomorrow we start phase 2. Phase 2 of what? Bill paused at the doorway. Of whatever's testing us. The real experiment couldn't begin until they were gone. He left me standing alone in the room where past Bill had just disappeared. I sat on the edge of the empty bed, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The deaths, the disappearances, the loop we seemed stuck in. Outside the small window, Earth was visible in the black sky, pretty but too far away. Somewhere up there, people were living normal lives, with no idea about our crazy situation. They were going through time normally, forward, never going backwards or repeating. I thought about past Mark trying so hard to break the cycle by dying. About past Samantha choosing to end things instead of waiting for whatever would happen next. About past Bill asking me to help him leave his own way. All 3 of them were gone now, disappeared but leaving traces of what they'd done before. And the 3 of us were still here, Bill, Samantha, and me, alone at Moon Base Bravo with whatever strange thing had trapped us here. The countdown had begun, just as past Bill had warned. But a countdown to what? Our deaths? Another reset? Something worse? I went back to my quarters but didn't sleep. I sat at my desk writing down everything that had happened, hoping to find some pattern, some clue that previous versions of ourselves had missed. The answer had to be here somewhere. It had to be, because I couldn't accept the other possibility, that we were truly stuck repeating the same events over and over, with small changes each time but never escaping. 3 months into our time at Moon Base Bravo, I sat alone in the command center. It was too quiet. My tablet was nearly full with notes and theories. I was trying hard to find any pattern or weakness we could use. I looked through weeks of temperature readings from the room with the anomaly. I sorted them different ways, by time, by moon phase, randomly, hoping to spot something useful. After hours of staring, the numbers all ran together and told me nothing. The base seemed empty without the past crew. It was too quiet in places where there used to be at least some human noise. Now it was just the 3 of us in this big metal place, mostly staying away from each other. I closed the environmental program and opened the base plans again. There had to be something in the original designs that would explain why they built this particular base over whatever was under the surface. Maybe I missed something in my many times looking at the blueprints. My stomach growled, reminding me I'd skipped breakfast. I couldn't remember if I'd eaten dinner last night either. The days all mixed together now, except for my careful note-taking and the regular check-ins Bill made us do. I walked to the mess hall, my footsteps bouncing through the empty hallways. The lighting wasn't working right in several areas, blinking or going dim randomly. None of us had bothered to fix it. Samantha sat alone at the table, a cold cup of coffee in front of her. She didn't look up as I came in. Her hair hung loose and unwashed, and she'd lost enough weight that her jumpsuit hung from her shoulders. "Morning," I said, moving to the food storage unit. She didn't respond. I'd stopped expecting her to. Over the past few weeks, she'd spoken less and less until conversations had dwindled to nothing but necessary communication about base operations. I heated up a pouch of breakfast mix, rehydrated eggs, and something that looked like sausage, and sat across from her. She was staring at her reflection in the shiny metal table, one hand resting on it. "You should eat something," I said. Samantha's fingers made slow circles on the metal, trying to touch her reflection like she thought her hand might go through the surface. I'd caught her doing this more and more lately, checking reflective surfaces all over the base as if looking for a doorway to somewhere else. "They're coming to get us today," she said suddenly. I paused mid-bite. "Who is?" "Mission Control." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "The chemical leak at Alpha is contained. They're sending an extraction team." I felt anxious. This wasn't the first time she'd made such claims. Last week, she'd insisted a supply ship had landed outside. The week before, she'd packed her personal items, certain we were leaving. "That's good news," I said carefully. "Did Bill tell you that?" She didn't answer, just continued tracing her reflection with her fingertip. I finished my breakfast in silence, then left her there, still staring down at herself in the metal table. I found Bill in the observatory, standing by the big window that had the best view of Earth. He was holding a thick, leather-bound notebook I knew was one of past Bill's journals. Dark circles sat under his eyes, and his beard had gray in it that wasn't there when we first got here. "She's getting worse," I said by way of greeting. Bill didn't turn from the window. "I know. Today she thinks Mission Control is sending an extraction team. Yesterday it was her parents coming to visit." Bill sighed heavily. "She's slipping away faster than I expected." I joined him at the window. Earth hung in the blackness, blue and white, and so far away it hurt to look at. "Anything useful in those?" I nodded toward the journal. Bill turned to me looking worried. "I know why we're here," he said. "The anomaly isn't natural. The original base builders found something under the moon's surface and brought it up, something that broke time." He handed me the journal, open to a page filled with past Bill's neat handwriting. Diagrams were all over the margins, showing cutaways of the moon's surface, the base's foundation, and the weird object we'd seen stuck in the floor of the maintenance room. "They were mining for water ice," Bill continued as I skimmed the page. "Standard procedure for establishing the first permanent moon bases, but 20 meters down, they hit something metallic where nothing metal should be. Object appears to be artificial, composition unknown, carbon dating impossible, electromagnetic readings off the scale, command decision to extract and study even though the science team objected." "Keep reading," Bill urged. "First temporal distortion noted 16 hours after extraction. Minor at first. Equipment failures, communication lags. By the third day, crew reporting severe déjà vu. Sixth day, 2 crew members encountered themselves in previously empty corridors." I looked up at Bill. "Jesus." "They knew something was wrong," Bill said, taking the journal back. "They tried to return the object, bury it again. But by then it was too late. The effect had already taken hold. And Mission Control? Earth? Why didn't they send help?" Bill flipped forward several pages. Communications became less reliable. Messages arrived before they were sent. Eventually, Earth stopped responding altogether, or at least that's how it seemed to the crew inside the distortion field. So what happened to the original crew, the ones who found the object? According to this, they died trying to destroy it. Explosives, drilling into it, even trying to launch it into space. Nothing worked. Bill closed the journal. And that was the first loop. Since then, it's been cycling through variations. Past Bill documented at least 19 distinct cycles. The number made my stomach drop. 19 times. That's what past Mark wrote on his wall. Bill nodded. Each loop is a little different, but always ends the same way, with 3 deaths followed by 3 suicides. Then a reset. No crew has ever broken the pattern. I walked back and forth by the window, trying to process everything. But if we know the pattern now, we can change it, do something different. Like what? Bill's voice was tired. Past Bill tried everything. They all did, and here we are anyway. There has to be something, I insisted, some variable they didn't account for. Bill put the journal down on a nearby console. I've spent weeks looking through these. Past Bill was really thorough. He wrote down every attempt, every theory, every failure. The object can't be destroyed, can't be taken out of the base. The loop can't be broken through normal means. We need to try something different, I said, desperation creeping into my voice. Bill reached into his pocket and put 2 syringes on the table between us. Past Bill prepared these before I helped him, enough morphine to stop our hearts. He pushed one toward me. We die on our terms, not as part of its design. I looked at the syringe on the table, with Earth visible through the window behind it. You think killing ourselves will break the loop? Past Samantha tried that. Past Bill, too. Not to break the loop, Bill said quietly. To deny it the satisfaction of watching us break down like they did. To choose our ending rather than having it thrust upon us. I picked up the syringe, weighing it in my hand. What about Samantha? Already done, Bill said, his voice cracking slightly. She asked me to help her an hour ago. She's gone, Mark. The words shocked me. I sank into a chair, still holding the syringe. She's gone. Just like that. Bill nodded. She came to me in tears, thinking clearly for the first time in weeks. Said she couldn't tell which Samantha she was anymore. Past, present, future. They were all blending together in her mind. I remembered her at the mess hall table, touching her reflection, the distant look in her eyes. The conversation we'd had that morning suddenly took on a new meaning. She'd known she was leaving, just not in the way I'd thought. You should have told me, I said, anger flaring briefly. I could have said goodbye. She didn't want that. Bill sat across from me. She said it would be harder if you tried to talk her out of it. I looked down at the syringe in my hand, the anger fading as quickly as it had come. So this is it? We just check out? Let the loop win? The loop wins regardless, Bill said. But this way, we go peacefully, together, not alone and broken like they did. Through the window, Earth continued its slow arc across the lunar sky, oblivious to our fate. Somewhere up there, people were living normal lives, going to work, falling in love, growing old, all the things we would never do again. Will we remember when it resets? I asked. Bill shook his head. I don't know. Past Bill thought there might be some bleed through of memories, but nothing concrete. I rolled the syringe between my fingers. And you're sure this is the only way? I'm not sure of anything anymore, Bill admitted. But I'm tired, Mark. Tired of fighting against something I can't see or understand. Tired of watching history repeat itself. We sat in silence for several minutes, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, I nodded. Okay, let's do it. Bill pulled his chair closer to mine. We sat side by side, facing the window, Earth hanging in the black sky. We rolled up our sleeves and positioned the needles against our veins. On 3, Bill said. 1, 2. I pushed the needle into my skin, feeling the cold morphine enter my bloodstream. My last thought was of Samantha, wondering if she was already part of the loop, already fading away like the others. Then darkness took me. I opened my eyes to the steady beeping of module instruments. White noise from the navigation system filled the cabin, a sound I knew well, rhythmic and alive. Bill sat at the command console running pre-approach checks, working with focus and care. Samantha was in the pilot's seat, her hands moving across the controls like she'd done it 1,000 times. They both looked younger, rested. No shadows under their eyes, no gaunt cheeks, no 1,000-yard stares. My brain tried to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. Seconds ago, or was it months, I'd been sitting next to Bill in the observatory at Moon Base Bravo, pushing a syringe of morphine into my vein. I remembered the cold liquid entering my bloodstream, the darkness taking me. Now I was here, back in the lunar module, approaching lunar orbit, just as we had 3 months ago. Or was it moments ago? I touched my face, clean shaven. I looked down at my hands. No rough spots from fixing base equipment. No dirt under my fingernails from burying bodies that disappeared. My uniform was crisp, new, without the worn patches and stains from months of continuous wear. Approaching final orbital adjustment, Samantha announced, not turning away from her instruments. Bill nodded, checking something on his screen. Perfect, right on schedule. I tried to speak but couldn't find my voice. This wasn't possible, yet it was happening. My mind raced through possibilities, a dream, a hallucination from the morphine, my brain's last thoughts before shutting down. But everything felt too real. The hard seat beneath me, the noise of the air recycling system, the distant rumble of thrusters keeping us on course. Bill's console pinged with an incoming transmission. "We're receiving a message," he said, reaching for the comm switch. A sudden realization hit me. I knew what the message would say before Bill even turned on the channel. "Lunar Mission 23, this is Mission Control." The voice came through crystal clear, no static or distortion. "We have a situation at Alpha Base. A chemical leak has compromised the primary habitat modules. You are being diverted to Moon Base Bravo until we can confirm Alpha is safe. New coordinates are being transmitted now." Bill acknowledged the message while Samantha began inputting the new coordinates. Neither seemed concerned by this change of plans, because they didn't know. They couldn't remember. I felt really scared as I realized what was happening. The loop had started over. We were back at the beginning, about to make the same mistake that got us stuck in that nightmare for months. "We can't go to Bravo," I said, my voice coming out as a croak. Both Bill and Samantha turned to look at me. "What did you say?" Bill asked. "We can't go to Bravo," I repeated, louder now, pushing myself out of my seat. "It's a trap. There's something there, something that breaks time." Concern crossed Bill's face. "Mark, what's wrong? Are you feeling okay?" "No, listen to me." I moved toward the command console, my legs unsteady. "I've been through this before, we all have. Bravo isn't abandoned. There's a temporal anomaly there. If we land, we'll be trapped in a time loop." Samantha had stopped typing coordinates, her eyes wide. "Mark, you're not making sense." "There's something buried under the base," I continued, the words pouring out. "The original construction team found it, metallic, artificial. It fractured time, created a loop. We've been through this 19 times already." Bill stood up now, putting a hand on my shoulder. "Mark, sit down. You must be having some kind of episode. Space sickness, maybe." I shook his hand away. "I'm not sick. I remember everything. The base, the duplicates, the deaths, past Mark, past Samantha, past Bill. They died, and then we died too. I killed myself, Bill. You gave me the morphine. We both pushed the needle in, and then I woke up here." The concern on their faces had changed to alarm. Bill was moving toward the medical kit. I lunged for the communication system, pushing past him. I had to warn someone, anyone who would listen. "Mission Control, this is Mark Thompson," I shouted into the microphone. "Moonbase Bravo must be destroyed. It contains a temporal anomaly. Repeat, destroy Bravo immediately." Only static answered me. Bill pulled me away from the console. "That's enough!" His voice was hard now, commander mode activated. "Samantha, get the sedative!" "No!" I twisted out of his grip. "You have to believe me. This is the 20th loop. It never ends. We die every time." I looked over at my station. My notepad was open next to the systems monitor. I hadn't used it at all on this trip. We'd only been flying for a few hours. But the page was covered with writing. My writing. I grabbed it, my fingers shaking. The page was filled with calculations, diagrams, and warnings in my handwriting. But not exactly my current handwriting. It was a little different, more rushed and sharp-angled. It was how my writing would look after months of stress and fear at Moonbase Bravo. "Look at this." I thrust the pad toward Bill. "I didn't write this. Not yet. But it's my handwriting. What my handwriting becomes." Bill glanced at the notepad, then back at me. "Mark, please sit down. You're having some kind of psychological episode." "Read it," I insisted. "It explains everything. The anomaly, the loop, the deaths. It's all here." Samantha appeared at Bill's side, a syringe in her hand. The sight of it sent a flash of memory through me. Sitting beside Bill in the observatory, another syringe in my hand, pushing it into my vein, I backed away from them both. "Please, just read it. 1 page. If it doesn't convince you, I'll take the sedative." Bill hesitated, then nodded. 1 minute. He took the notepad from me and began to read. His expression remained skeptical, then confused, then troubled as his eyes moved down the page. "This is..." He flipped to the next page, then the next. "These are detailed schematics of Moonbase Bravo and calculations for temporal displacement?" "Yes," I said, relief flooding through me. "It's all there, everything we discovered during the last loop." Samantha looked over Bill's shoulder at the pad. "That does look like your handwriting, Mark, but more frantic." "Because I was frantic," I explained. "We all were. Trapped in that base, watching the same patterns repeat, learning we were just the latest iteration of the same crew experiencing the same deaths over and over." Bill lowered the notepad, his expression somber. "Even if what you're saying is true, and I'm not saying I believe it, what can we do? Mission Control has ordered us to Bravo." "We ignore the order," I said. "We go to Alpha anyway. The chemical leak is a lie. There never was one. It's just part of the trap." Samantha shook her head. "We can't disobey a direct order without cause." "This is cause." I pointed to the notepad. "This is proof." "It's not proof, Mark," Bill said gently. "It's a notepad with writing we can't explain. That's not enough to justify disobeying Mission Control." I ran my hands through my hair, pulling at it in frustration. They weren't going to believe me. Of course they weren't. It sounded insane. I wouldn't have believed it either, not before living through it. "Look," I said, trying a different approach. "Just check in with Alpha Base directly. If there really is a chemical leak, they'll confirm it. If not..." Bill considered this, then nodded. "That's reasonable." He turned to the comm system. "Samantha, try to raise Alpha Base." Samantha sat at the communications console and began transmitting. "Alpha Base, this is Lunar Mission 23 requesting status update. We've been informed of a chemical leak situation. Please confirm." We waited. Static hissed from the speakers. Samantha tried again. "Alpha Base, this is Lunar Mission 23. Please respond." More static. I knew there would be no answer. There never was. Bill made a face. "Try emergency channels." Samantha switched frequencies and repeated the call. Nothing. "This doesn't mean you're right," Bill said to me. "Communications problems are common due to lunar interference." I moved to the nearest window and looked out at the moon's surface as we orbited around. Far away, I could see something shiny, Moonbase Bravo. "There," I pointed. "Look at Bravo." Bill and Samantha came over to the window with me. As we looked down, tiny lights blinked on at the base, which we could see even from all the way up in orbit. "That's strange," Samantha murmured. "Bravo should be abandoned." "Those are the lights coming on to welcome us," I said quietly. "Just like last time. Just like every time." Bill pulled back from the viewport, looking worried. "I still don't understand how what you're describing could be possible. Time loops, duplicates. It defies all known physics." "I know," I admitted. "We never figured out exactly how it works, only that it does. The anomaly defies explanation." Samantha had returned to her console and was checking readings. "We need to make a decision soon. We're approaching the point where we need to begin descent." Bill looked between us, looking stressed out. "We've been ordered to Bravo, without concrete evidence to contradict those orders." "The lights are on in an abandoned base," I exclaimed. "Isn't that evidence enough?" "It could be automated systems," Bill reasoned. "Or Mission Control could have remotely activated the base for our arrival. I knew I was losing the argument. I could see it in their faces. They felt too much pressure to follow the rules. Samantha's hand hovered over the controls. "Commander? Decision?" Bill took a deep breath. "Set course for Bravo as ordered." "No!" I moved toward Samantha, but Bill blocked my path. "You're condemning us to the loop again." "Mark," Bill's voice was firm, "I'm not saying I disbelieve you entirely, but we need more information, and we can only get that at Bravo. If what you're saying is true, we'll investigate the anomaly together. We'll be prepared this time." Samantha steered us toward Bravo, moving with the same skill and confidence she always had. I sank back in my seat, feeling totally beaten. Through the window, Moon Base Bravo got bigger, its lights shining bright. I could almost see them waiting inside, our duplicates, our future selves, worn down after months stuck in a broken timeline. I knew what would happen next. We would land perfectly, but somehow our module would crash anyway. We would walk to the base, discover it was fully operational. We would meet our older selves, learn about the anomaly, watch them die one by one. Then we would follow the same path to our own deaths. And then I would wake up here again. Or perhaps it would be a different version of me next time. Mark 21 instead of Mark 20. I picked up the notepad again, looking at the equations and warnings written by my future self. I hadn't written these words yet, but I would. Just like I had 19 times before. "It's happening again," I whispered as we began our descent toward the waiting maw of Moonbase Bravo, toward the temporal trap that had claimed us all, over and over, in an endless dance of death and rebirth. Through the viewport, the lunar surface rushed up to meet us. Samantha's hands moved smoothly across the controls. Bill watched our approach path. Everything was exactly as it had been before. The loop continued.